A fact I think you might find surprising. 1 in 15 young people in Britain hurt themselves deliberately, according to the latest research. A new online website to help 16 to 25-year-olds is being launched today, and Katie Hamilton is a former self-harmer.
I first cut myself when I was 16, but I wasn't aware that there was anything wrong. I kind of knew that I felt bad, but I couldn't articulate it. I couldn't explain what was wrong with me. Within about 3 weeks of starting to cut myself, I became really addicted to it. From there, it moved on to suicidal things. I would get something sharp. Initially it was scissors, but then it moved on to razor blades. Now that I'm 19, I can look back and see that there were serious problems at the time which other people should have recognised, but I wasn't in a position to recognise myself. I was really miserable all the time. I was extremely self-conscious of everything that I did and how I looked and everything that I said, and I was very introverted. I didn't talk as much as normal, and I wasn't particularly bouncy or happy in any way, really. I feel really strongly that people shouldn't think that it's just because people can't deal with normal life. It's not that at all. It's deep-rooted psychological problems. That's when people would cut themselves.
Well, as you can see, Katie joins us now along with the psychotherapist Andrea Scherzer from the online charity YouthNet. Thanks so much indeed for being with us, and thank you for being so brave enough to talk about this. Thanks, because it takes a lot of courage to do so. So congratulations on that front for a start. Reflecting on it, I mean, have you any idea what really started this? What was the real cause of it?
Things that happened when I was younger, in my kind of family unit with my parents. I basically wasn't taught how to recognise any of my emotional difficulties and deal with any kind of normal, anything really.
And you say no one picked up on it, but it's fair to say that in many cases, I don't know about yours, this is done very secretly. People don't actually advertise the fact, do they? Yeah,
that's true. I think the actual behaviour is quite secret, but often there are other things that are noticeably wrong. I think that was the point that I was making just before, is that even though I wasn't that public about self-harm, I did tell a few people, there were other things that were very wrong.
Yeah. And there's no such thing as a typical self-harmer, is there?
No,
I mean,
not at all.
We often say in this programme, oh, here's a typical case. Well, she isn't a typical case because there's no such thing, is there?
There's no such thing as a typical person. I think that's kind of what it comes down to. So we all express our emotional difficulties in different ways. You know, it can be anyone, actually. You know, self-harm affects anyone across the board.
Yeah, and often, I think you had friends who wanted to help, but they didn't know how to. Now with this new online facility, presumably that will change to some degree. Tell me what sort of service it offers.
YouthNet is an organisation that provides all sorts of support for young people and advice for young people. The site.org is specifically set up to help people with emotional difficulties, relationship difficulties, and now with a couple of other charities, self-harm difficulties. So I think it's about helping people recognise they have a problem, begin to talk about it, as Katie finally was able to do, and begin to think about where they might want to try and get help.
I'm sure it is obviously a very worthwhile project, but is there a danger that in just 1 or 2 instances it might actually encourage some youngsters to do this? What do you think?
No, not at all.
No?
There's discussion boards on the website where you can post threads and talk about how you're feeling, and people respond. Everyone is incredibly supportive of each other. No one would ever encourage anyone else, I don't think.
A mum and dad watching at home, or parents or guardians of any kind, would want to know what can they do, because these things, if they are done in secret, are not easy to spot, and often I suspect the youngsters are reluctant to talk about it.
Sure. I think the most important thing, we were talking about this earlier, is self-harm, particularly if it's something like cutting or physically hurting one's skin, that can be visible. It can be quite shocking for people. So I think the first thing we'd say to caregivers and parents is try not to be overwhelmed by the shock of it, because that then detracts from talking to the person and helping the person think about what they're actually trying to express.
And don't say don't do it again.
And don't say don't do it again, because for some people it is their way of managing difficult feelings. So talk to the young person, get them to try and put into words what they're expressing through hurting themselves.
I think that young people tend to focus on the amount that they cut and how deep the cuts are, and kind of literal things like that, when actually that's not very important, I don't think. And doctors tend to focus on that sort of thing as well. And if the parents can take responsibility and try and draw the attention back to what the original problems are, I think that's really important.
Okay, well, Katie, thanks so much to you for coming and talking publicly about it. Very good of you. And also, Andrea, thank you very much to you. You can find more advice and information on our website, including the signs to look for. That's at gm.tv.
Now, to come on GMTV, there's been a big increase in the number of complaints that we all make about shoddy goods and services. So, what's the best way to fight? You're all right.
No,
are you speechless?
No, tickling my throat.
I'm furious with John for coughing. Let's find out the best way to fight for your rights.
Sometimes when I complain, I can do it quite in a passive way, so no one really listens to me. If I'm doing it quite assertive, then I hope to get a good response out of that. Depends on your delivery when you're complaining, I think.